CM Punk has realized his dream. He is going to main event WrestleMania, and we know it's made official now after the segment on this week's edition of WWE SmackDown from London, where it was announced that Punk would indeed main event WrestleMania for the first time, as he will take on Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins in the triple threat match that we assume is going to headline night one of WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas. They didn't make it official, but we know that you're going to have John Cena challenging Cody Rhodes for the WWE Undisputed title as well, and you would think that will be your night two main event. Which means, of course, we won't have main event Jey Uso taking on Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship in the main event of night one. We won't have the women's match, the three-way between Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, and Bianca Belair, but it is indeed CM Punk. But everyone's asking, not is CM Punk going to main event WrestleMania this year anymore? That's not the question on everyone's mind. The question on everyone's mind is what is the favor? Because just when we thought that, okay, maybe this is the favor, right? We mentioned it in a couple previous videos. Perhaps Paul Heyman pulling the strings to get CM Punk a main event. That would be enough, right? That would be enough for CM Punk to have everything he's ever wanted. Not so fast, because we know at the end of SmackDown, it was Punk telling Roman Reigns, who was all jovial. Reigns was excited. He's like, all right, one man's dream is another man's favor. But CM Punk made it clear to Roman Reigns that that was not the favor. There's still that favor sitting out there that Paul Heyman owes CM Punk. What is it? Well, everyone is talking about a lot of different ideas as to what this could be. And we've talked about them in previous videos before as to how this whole thing could play out, right? And when you really think about it and you look at the way that Paul Heyman reacts, I think that's sort of the biggest thing in this whole equation, right? When we see CM Punk deliver this message to Roman Reigns, and you see kind of the look in Paul Heyman's eyes, right? This is just one of the clips you could find of that visual. When you have Punk sort of sitting there acknowledging Roman Reigns, thanking the Tribal Chief for giving him the WrestleMania main event, but as soon as CM Punk brings up that favor, right? That's the thing that gets the wheels going in Roman Reigns' head. It gets Paul Heyman a little bit flustered knowing that he still has to deliver this favor, and we are to assume that Paul Heyman knows what this favor is, right? Think all the way back to the stuff that they did leading into Survivor Series and the whole idea that we were going to get Roman Reigns teaming up with CM Punk. You know, they did sort of the cinema-style, vignette where they're all sitting at the table in this dark room, and Roman Reigns just wants to know what the favor is, right? And Punk keeps saying, we'll talk about that after Survivor Series. And of course, we've never really talked about it all that much, but now we're sitting here a month away, less than a month away from WrestleMania, and knowing that it's still on Roman Reigns' mind. Okay, I feel like I've delivered this main event to CM Punk. My wise man has helped deliver what CM Punk wants, so now it's just about me and the wise man Paul Heyman, right? That's the way Roman Reigns is approaching it. But we know that's not the case. But when you see sort of that reluctant style that Paul Heyman is bringing to the table here, when Punk brings up that favor, that should make it pretty clear to us that this is not going to be something as simple maybe as, again, just perhaps Paul Heyman turning on Roman Reigns and joining CM Punk. That's one of the many theories that are out there. But that one seems a little obvious, right? It would make sense if you wanted to say that Punk's favor is just simply having the wise man all to himself, having Paul Heyman make one of the toughest decisions, if not the toughest decision, of his entire career, and abandoning Roman Reigns, his tribal chief, for CM Punk, for this next chapter of whatever the story looks like. That is one theory, right? But if you keep looking at it, it does seem a little bit too obvious, right? That is just a clear direction they could go in. And the way that Punk is sort of setting it up, maybe it's not as simple as that. Because remember, too, Punk talked about the favor when he's done these previous interviews with Jackie Redmond on Raw and all this, how the favor would play into somebody that Paul Heyman was close with, right? And I think that continues to kind of let the wheels turn, right? Well, who all is Paul Heyman close to? Well, we know as a member, the wise man of the bloodline, Paul Heyman's going to be close to anyone within the bloodline, right? We also know that The Rock has some sort of, kind of connection there when it comes to everything that is involved, the bloodline of The Rock over the past year or so, even though things started to turn their attention towards Cody and John Cena and all this other stuff as of late. And you never can really predict what The Rock is going to do next and or when he will be there next. So maybe that is still something that they're going to use down the road. But for now, being able to think about it in terms of, okay, Maybe Heyman got him the WrestleMania main event. Maybe somehow The Rock was involved in that. But maybe that is the person that Paul Heyman's close to, because at one point he did have cell phones for both Roman Reigns and The Rock, right? Last year at this time. So that's something to think about. And again, people have brought up the other idea of the favor maybe being that CM Punk is going to call in the favor of having Paul Heyman manage him, right, for this WrestleMania main event, the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that has eluded CM Punk for all these years. The favor is going to be that somehow Punk requests that Heyman follow him to the ring, be his manager, right? And think about all the mind games that are going to go into that when it comes to what Roman Reigns would do at that point. Roman Reigns would completely explode and just would not know what to do. And if anything, it almost would not be the best thing for CM Punk, because you feel like that would only increase the irritation and frustration for Roman Reigns, and not even to mention Seth Rollins, who we know absolutely despises the idea now that CM Punk is getting what he wants with this WrestleMania main event. So I don't know if, again, that is also something when we talk about this favor, and if you tie into what Punk has said before about it being related to someone that Heyman is close to. I mean, Roman Reigns seems like the obvious choice, right? But it's too obvious, it feels, unless that is just simply the direction they're going in and they're just dragging it out further and further and further. And so that's where you have to ask, like, what is big enough to sort of warrant the way that they've played this out? What is bigger than a potential favor being the WrestleMania main event, the lifelong dream of CM Punk? That's not big enough for this favor. And so the way they're playing it up, the favor is bigger than that. So that's where, again, this thing gets very intriguing, because if it's bigger than the WrestleMania main events, well, then to me, like, again, you're tying in something to do perhaps with a championship, or maybe, like I said, it is something that ties into Heyman leaving Roman Reigns for CM Punk, but you have to do it, I think, in a little bit more of a, a different way, other than just having Paul Heyman turn on Roman Reigns, right? So you've got to then start to wonder, what is it that Paul Heyman holds the keys to? He holds the keys to something perhaps bigger than simply getting what CM Punk has wanted throughout his entire professional wrestling career. And that's where the wheels start turning, right? You start to come up with all these other ideas. Well, you guys know, one of the things we mentioned in one of the previous videos, way back when we were talking about this favor and how they were going to play it into WrestleMania, and I said I thought that this favor could still be the thing that changes WrestleMania 41, period. And that was before, we kind of saw the way things played out at the Royal Rumble, before we saw John Cena make the shocking heel turn on Cody Rhodes at the Elimination Chamber to sell his soul to The Rock and all that. We said one of the ideas you could flirt with is the potential that somehow that favor for Paul Heyman is getting CM Punk added to the WWE Undisputed Championship match at WrestleMania, right? And I mentioned all the reasons for that at the time. I'm like, well, John Cena is not a full-time wrestler. Do you really want going out there and having a 30-minute match, in a WrestleMania Night 2 setting? Like, this is the biggest match of the year for WWE. Do you think that Cena is going to be in a position where he can have that kind of match? Not to say that John Cena is out of shape or anything like that, but it is a lot to ask, right? It's one of the reasons they put The Rock in a tag team match last year, was that all the attention was not on The Rock for that entire, lengthy match that they had. They could do a lot of things with it. You can still do that with Cena and Cody this year, but it is just Cena and Cody, right? So people have brought up, well, is it going to be as simple as Paul Heyman is putting something perhaps into this? Maybe there is some fine print in this contract that Roman Reigns didn't read, that Seth Rollins didn't read, because they were too focused on other things, right? Rollins too focused on his frustration with Punk and Reigns. Reigns just too focused on, all right, I saw the WrestleMania main event in there. That's all I need to read. I don't need to read anything else. Maybe there is some more fine print in the contract that has to do with a potential championship opportunity on night 2, a potential championship opportunity at some point in the future. These are things that I think you could throw in as possibilities. But again, it still ties into, how does this point to what, again, CM Punk has talked about when it comes to what this favor could actually be and mean with Paul Heyman and someone that's close to him. I mean, like I said, Reigns is the obvious choice, but The Rock is a potential factor in here. And if you tie in everything we know with The Rock bringing up his power on the TKO board and how that applies to John Cena, which we don't yet know the answer to because Cena's not addressed it in any of the promos he's done so far, and I explained in a previous video why, that has been a little off-putting, I think, for me and others with that, but that's where we're at now, right? And I think adding CM Punk to that Cody versus Cena match now, given what they've done to this point, it may have made sense 2 months ago. But now it's like this is really kind of a lot about John Cena and Cody Rhodes with the dynamic they're doing, with Cena as the full heel, with Cody as the ultimate babyface, adding Punk to the mix. It would make sense from Punk's perspective to be able to try to get that. Somehow the wise man can pull this off, given that he's the wise man. He has all these connections. But do you really need that at this point? Or is it somehow adding Punk to the other match with Jey Uso and Gunther? But if we assume that's going to be on night one, does that factor in as well? Or is it one of those things where, who knows, right? Maybe Punk, Reigns, Rollins, main event night one. All of a sudden, Jey and Gunther open up night two. And perhaps somehow that is where Punk not only gets his WrestleMania main event, but literally in the next match on the WrestleMania card the next day later, he gets his World Heavyweight Championship spot. So, these are all different things that I think you could play into this, but there are a lot of options you could go with, but it does seem like some of these are a little too obvious, as I said, and sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. But it does feel like they're going something that feels a little bit more like a swerve, right? Because we've seen that before. Even though we mentioned all the things they could do with John Cena turning heel and everything, until they actually did it, we didn't know if they were going to go that far. And so you've got to think that they have something up their sleeve here when it comes to this favor, and it wouldn't feel like the bigger thing than the WrestleMania main event right now. Because as we said, so many people, Roman Reigns included, they did that for a reason, having Reigns think that, all right, this is the favor because that was big, right? It was huge for Punk to finally meet his goal. But that wasn't it. So it's got to be something bigger than that. It's got to be something that's sitting out there. And again, I know people have talked about Brock Lesnar, all this other stuff. Of course, Heyman's close to Lesnar, all these other things. There are a lot of ways they can go with this. And, the popular choices seem to be simply Heyman turning on Reigns and joining Punk, Heyman managing Punk at WrestleMania 41. Heyman somehow finds a way to get Punk added to the championship match, whichever one that is at WrestleMania 41. Those seem to be the three leading options for a lot of people. But there has to also be, I think, other options considered out there because some of those seem pretty clear. Some of those make more sense than others. But I think we're still kind of sitting here trying to see how they're going to do this. And as with everything with WWE right now, it may not be as simple as us finding out at WrestleMania 41. This may really be the slow burn and everything coming out of it, but I do think you've got to culminate this one pretty more quicker, I guess more quickly than others, right? Because this feels like one with the way they're playing the story out. This is such a huge match that they're main eventing night whatever of WrestleMania. You've got to have some more stakes involved, and that was our immediate issue with the idea of the triple threat, was that it didn't feel like there were a lot of stakes necessarily. Well, now the stakes aren't necessarily sitting there in the open for us, but having the Paul Heyman favor still kind of hanging out there, that may be all we need to add a little bit more to this triple threat match, which will main event one night of WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas. So which option are you going with? What do you think is the favor of, let's say, not just the three top choices that I mentioned, but what else do you think is the possibility with Paul Heyman and this favor to CM Punk? Many people thought it was simply the WrestleMania main event. We now know that's not the case. What is your prediction for what you think this favor is going to be now that we have a little bit more behind it, right? We all made our predictions a month ago, 2 months ago, whatever, all the way back at Survivor Series. But now as things stand, how's it going to play out with CM Punk and his favor from Paul Heyman? You guys let me know what you think. Always appreciate your feedback. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and let me know your thoughts on this favor that Paul Heyman owes CM Punk.